Does the Prime Minister stand by his statement at the dispatch box on the 10th of September last year that full due process was followed in the appointment of Peter Mandelson as our ambassador to Washington?
Yes, I do. Mr. Speaker, let me make clear at the outset that the appointment itself was a mistake. It was my mistake. I've apologised to the victims for it, and I do so again. What I set out to the House on Monday is that Foreign Office officials granted security clearance to Mandelson against the recommendation of UK security vetting. Yesterday, Sir Olly Robbins was asked if he shared that decision with me, Number 10, or any other ministers. He gave a clear answer, no. Mr. Speaker, that puts to bed all the allegations levelled at me by those opposite in relation to dishonesty. Last week they were all saying that it must have been shared with me. Sir Olly was very clear yesterday it was not. I believe not sharing it was a serious error of judgment. That information should have been shared with me and other ministers. And if it had have been, Mandelson would not have been committed to post.
Mr. Speaker, it does not put to bed anything. On the 11th of November 2024, long before any vetting had happened, the Prime Minister received advice from Simon Case, the then Cabinet Secretary. The advice said the appointment would require, and I quote, the necessary security clearances before confirming the Prime Minister's choice. This advice was ignored. So how can the Prime Minister still believe that confirming Mandelson before the security clearances was following full due process?
Mr. Speaker, this was looked into by Sir Chris Wormold. I asked him to review the appointment process, including the vetting. He confirmed, Mr. Speaker, his words, appropriate processes were followed. She's put great weight on the order of events. I remind her what Sir Chris said last November in evidence to the House. He said this, and I quote, when we are making appointments from outside the civil service, the normal thing is for security clearance to happen after appointment, but before the person signs a contract and takes up post. That is what happened in this case. Sir Olly Robbins himself, Mr. Speaker, also gave evidence, and he said, and I quote, as is normally the case with external appointments in his department, the appointment was made subject to obtaining security clearance. Mr. Speaker, on top of that, Sir Olly Robbins has made clear that the fact that developed vetting was after announcement made, in his words, no material difference to the conclusion that was reached. And Mr. Speaker, I add this, that what Sir Olly Robbins wrote to the committee yesterday was this, and I quote, when the Prime Minister informed the House that the proper process had been followed in respect of national security vetting, he was correct.
It's very interesting that he mentions Chris Wormold. He is relying on advice given to him after Mandelson was sacked by a Cabinet Secretary the Prime Minister then sacked. That is not relevant. I'm talking about the advice he was given before the appointment. He keeps mentioning Sir Olly Robbins. Sir Olly Robbins told us that the Prime Minister even sought clearance from His Majesty the King before the vetting. He'd already got agreement from the US administration. The chair of the Select Committee said that. Mandelson was a done deal. Yesterday, Sir Olly Robbins said that the focus was on getting Mandelson out to Washington quickly. He said the Prime Minister's team showed a dismissive attitude to vetting. And they even argued Peter Mandelson didn't need any vetting at all. This clearly wasn't proper process. Why was due process not followed?
Mr. Speaker, let me deal with this directly, particularly this question of pressure in relation to the decision to appoint and to put into post Peter Mandelson. Sir Olly Robbins could not have been clearer in his evidence yesterday. He said this, I didn't feel under pressure personally in terms of my judgment. His words. Mr. Speaker, he went on to say I have complete confidence that recommendations to me and the discussions we had and the decision we made were rigorously independent of any pressure. Mr. Speaker, on top of that, he was asked if any conversations led him to believe that Mandelson needed to take up the role regardless of vetting outcome. He said, "I can say with certainty it was never put to me in that way." No pressure existed whatsoever in relation to this case. What is unacceptable is that the recommendation of UKSV was not given to me before Mandelson took up his post.
Mr. Speaker, we all heard what Sir Olly Robbins said yesterday. The fact of the matter is that the Prime Minister spent a lot of time telling us just how furious he was to learn that Mandelson failed the vetting, the same Prime Minister who was trying to get into Washington without any vetting at all. It's just unbelievable. The reason the Cabinet Secretary advised the Prime Minister to carry out full vetting before the appointment, this is common sense, Mr. Speaker, carry out full vetting before the appointment, was to protect our national security. The due diligence document said Mandelson remained on the board of the Kremlin-linked defence company Sistema long after Putin's first invasion of Ukraine in 2014. The Prime Minister told us on Monday that he'd read that due diligence report. Why did the Prime Minister want to make a man with links to the Kremlin our ambassador in Washington?
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me deal with the first allegation she put in that question. It was always the case that would be developed vetting in this case. That was the understood process. That was carried out. It was reviewed by Sir Chris Wormold, and he said it was the appropriate process. Sir Olly was absolutely clear that nobody put pressure on him to make this appointment, either, whatever the sequence, developed a vetting. In relation to what was in the due process, any issues of national security are dealt with in the developed vetting process. I knew that. Peter Mandelson received clearance through that process. The problem was, as I said to the House, I was unaware that UKSV recommended against clearance. That is information that should have been brought to my attention. Mr. Speaker, they recommended with red flags that there shouldn't be clearance, and it was high concern. That information should have been made available to me at the time and subsequently. The fact that it wasn't was a very serious error of judgment.
Kemi Badenoch.
I don't know what planet the Prime Minister is on, Mr. Speaker. Appointing someone with known links to the Kremlin is not full due process. If anybody had brought that sort of name to me when I was a Secretary of State, I would have said, no way. The Prime Minister thought someone with Kremlin links was still probably OK. Let's do some vetting. Why does this matter? He keeps leaning on Sir Olly Robbins, a man he sacked. He keeps leaning on him. Sir Olly Robbins said yesterday that Peter Mandelson was given access to highly classified briefings even before he'd received clearance. That was a clear national security risk. How can the Prime Minister still maintain that full due process was followed?
Mr. Speaker, as a member of the House of Lords and Privy Councillor, and in accordance with guidance, documentation could have been provided to him and was provided to him. Strap material comes after developed vetting, but because he was a Privy Councillor, he could have access to other material before developed vetting.
This is a joke. He says a member of the House of Lords. Does he mean people like Matthew Doyle? Yeah. I'm amazed. Yes, right. I am amazed at the level of chuntering from Labour MPs. He promised them probity. What he's given them is cronyism and an old boys' club where Matthew Doyle is being proposed as an ambassador. Ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Mr. Speaker, we all heard Sir Olly Robbins' testimony yesterday. The head of the Foreign Office was sacked for the Prime Minister's own failings. His backbenchers know that is not fair. Even his most loyal cabinet members won't defend it. The Prime Minister did not follow the process the Cabinet Secretary set out in November 2024. He knows he did not follow due process, yet he told the House he had. Mr. Speaker, I cannot accuse the Prime Minister of deliberately misleading the House, but everyone can see what has happened here. This was not due process. Everyone knows the price of misleading the House. Will the Prime Minister finally take responsibility and go?
Well, Mr. Speaker, let's be absolutely clear. Before Mandelson took up his post, UKSV recommended with red flags that clearance should be denied, and there was high concern that that was not brought to my attention or the attention of the Foreign Secretary at the time or subsequently is a very serious error of judgment, and anyone in my position would have lost confidence in the former Permanent Secretary. But, Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition claimed on Friday that Mandelson could not have been cleared against security advice. She was wrong about that. She said that ministers must have been told. She was wrong about that. She claimed there was deliberate dishonesty. She was wrong about that. Wrong, wrong, wrong. She rushed to judgment as she always did, just like the Iran war. Mr. Speaker, I was elected by the British people because they let the country down for 14 long years. Whatever she says, whatever noise they make, nothing is going to distract me from delivering for our country.